What is it when two bad guys have a disagreement? It makes a fantastic story. My name is Dorian. This is SEM Comics. We are covering the complete 4-part limited series, X-Men's Apocalypse vs. Dracula. Let's begin. So our story starts off in 1459 Romania on a battlefield where we have Vlad Tepes, which hopefully if there's any Romanian people watching, you guys appreciated that pronunciation, is on the battlefield doing his thing. And on the next couple pages, you find out why he has a nickname of Vlad the Impaler. So one of his generals is looking through a spyglass and he sees this flag on the horizon and he's like, Vlad, we got trouble. That's the flag of the Riders of the Dark. And Vlad's like, they're not real, that's their myth. And he's like, well, that myth is coming right this way. So then we see this huge dude on this massive horse, and he has like 2 double-bladed axes in his back, and he comes riding up and he takes the axe out and he fuses them together, and then he just throws it and starts cutting down Vlad's army. So then the general that's next to Vlad just goes running, and Vlad's like, you know what, run off, coward, I'll take care of this. So Vlad walks up to him, and how does Ernie from Blur Revive here say it? It was a solo dolo.
Oh, shit! That's my bike, punk!
The only thing that would have made the situation better is if one of Apocalypse Horsemen came running up to Dracula and be like,
You got knocked the fuck out!
and then one of Vlad's generals would have walked up and then Apocalypse is like,
Oh, you want something too, old man? Huh?
No. Get off your ass and get in this car, boy.
Okay, I'm done with my Friday moment. So Apocalypse thinks the battle's over with. He's about to ride off when Vlad, in a very weakened voice, goes, I'm not done yet. So Apocalypse just walks over, puts the boots on him. So on the next page, it takes place in Egypt, and we see Ozymandias, who him and Apocalypse go way back and they have a complicated history. If you want to know more, just let me know in the comments. And you see he was going down to this tomb, and he was going down there to wake up his master, Apocalypse. On the next page, down we're in London, 1897, and there's a woman that's dead on the street. You can see there's 2 bite marks and her blood has been sucked out. Now, we as a reader, we know what's going down, but to them, this is a mystery, wondering what the hell's going on, because it's not the first time that this has happened. So they're looking over the woman's body, and one of the detectives noticed that she has a tattoo on her hand, and he knows that it's Egyptian hieroglyphics. And he comes to the conclusion that there's one guy that knows about Egyptian hieroglyphics. And then the third detective, who I guess was supposed to be there, who arrives late, shows up, and him and this other detective starts arguing about him being late and so on and so forth. And then they're like, well, we got a lead, so we need to go to Alexandria House. And one detective got there late, said, nah, we don't really need to go there. You know, the rich don't need to be bothered, because I guess it's a really wealthy place. And they're like, nah, forget that. He can at least answer our questions, so we're going. So on the next page, they go to Alexandria House and they talk to Hamilton Slade, who is the owner of the place. And he's the one whose heritage dates back to the Egyptians, which the one detective knew. That's why he wanted to talk to him about it. And he told him how the mark means clan of Kaaba. And he has a whole nothing back. Like, he pretty much gives a business. He tells them how they're a clan that worships this person who they feel is even higher than a god in Apocalypse, and how their clan has been there for like all the important events in history. And it's pretty slick how he starts breaking down these events. He goes, when Rome burned, we were there to light the flames. When the French Revolution was going on and people getting sent to the gallows, we were there to sharpen the blade. And we even had people on the Mayflower, and we helped discover the new world. So then he starts to explain how the size of the tattoo determines how much of Apocalypse blood you have in your body. He says she only had a little bit. Then he takes off his shirt and he shows his tattoo and he goes, me, on the other hand, how much do you think I have in me? So then he just starts taking these detectives out. he can morph his body like Apocalypse, so he makes his mouth really big. He bites down on the one detective's head and just rips it off. Then other detective starts to shoot him. He changes his hand to where his like fingers are like really sharp, and he stabs the other one into the stomach. So it looks like he's about to kill the other one, but really he's in cahoots with him. That detective is also with Clan Akaba, I guess. I don't know if he has a symbol on his hand or not, but he works with him. And he was supposed to be the one to get to the crime scene first and remove the symbol so that nobody can link it back. But he got there late, obviously, and that's when Hamilton starts to beef with him. So then they get to talking about how they need to figure out who's taking out their people. And then Hamilton, he got all kinds of hubris, and he's like, you know what? You want something done right, you gotta do it yourself. I'm gonna go out and I'm gonna find out who's responsible, and I'm gonna take them out. And he goes to the door. In the comic book, there's like, and that was the last time anybody seen Hamilton alive again. So the key word is alive. We're going to see Hamilton again, but his teeth are probably going to be a lot sharper than what they are right now. So because Hamilton got taken out, I guess now all the you guess you could say board members of Clan Akaba have a roundtable meeting, and they decide that they're going to wake up Apocalypse, and they really don't want to do that because I guess Apocalypse really hates getting woken up from his slumber, especially early, I guess. But they feel like they got no choice, so they're going to go ahead and do it. And they're like, you know what? We got to wake him up, and we just got to face the consequences. F that. We can't handle what was going on right now. We need him. So sure enough, on the last page, you see they walk up and they go, my lord, and he opens up his sarcophagus and he goes, who dares wake up Apocalypse? If this wasn't a comic book with two supervillains, this would be straight out of a gangster movie. My name is Dorian, this is SCN Comics, and we are covering the complete 4-part limited series Apocalypse vs. Dracula. So our story starts off in Chinatown, where our detective, who is working for Apocalypse, is getting his opium fix, when all of a sudden this guy comes barging in with a top hat, a trench coat, and a scarf over his face, holding a knife to our detective's neck, letting him know that he needs to come with him immediately. And this is why Apocalypse is a gangster. If you guys remember back in part 1, where I said that the clan does not want to wake up Apocalypse, that they waited until their best dude comes up missing before they even consider doing this. And now that they have, now somebody's going to face the consequences, and you see it right here. Apocalypse doesn't say one word. He just comes in, yokes this girl up by her neck, picks her all the way up, turns his hand into some claws, and stabs the hell out of her and kills her instantly before he even addresses anybody. That is gangster. Then he just sits down, starts cleaning himself up, and says, my selection has been made. Now you may make a request of me. And all they got to say is, praise be in Samanor. So this dude, Kabar, walks up to Apocalypse and says, now that he is the fittest, he will speak for everybody. And Hamilton's mom ain't having it. She's a part of the clan too, and she's like, hold on, time out. Hamilton's the fittest, and he can come back. And Kabar's like, look, your boy got murked. He's done so. He ain't coming back. And you know, she ain't having it, so they get to fighting, and Apocalypse letting all this happen. He got her in like this clamp device that he made his hand turn into. She scratches his face, and then he starts squeezing tight and telling her to submit. Well, finally she submits, but this all of a sudden this pisses off Apocalypse, and he hits the table and he breaks it, and he's like, enough, my time is precious. You need to explain to me why you woke me up, otherwise I'ma handle some more people. So that's when our detective walks to the front door and starts explaining to Apocalypse how the clan people are getting taken out one by one. And Kabar's like, hold on, time out. You're a lower level. You're not even supposed to be addressing Apocalypse. He's like, look, I know I'm a lower level, but I'm the detective on this case. I've been to all the crime scenes, so I'm the best one to let Apocalypse know what's going on. And then right behind him walks in Abraham Van Helsing. And if you have the last name of Van Helsing, we all know what you do.
Killing Nazis.
Vampires. I'm pretty sure you're not even supposed to use that word anymore. I gotta talk to my editor. Now, Van Helsing, to be more specific, is a monster hunter. He mainly hunts vampires, but he will hunt all monsters, and him and Apocalypse know each other because, like Braun Strowman, Apocalypse could probably be considered to be
for the monster of all monsters.
So Van Helsing is trying to give Apocalypse a lowdown on Dracula, and this is pissing off Apocalypse. He doesn't want to hear any of this stuff. But then Ozymandias steps in and he's like, hey, you got history with this dude. Don't you remember way back when you clapped them cheeks? Well, he didn't forget, and now he wants revenge. And Apocalypse is pretty much like, I clap a lot of cheeks. That's what I do. You expect for me to remember all of them? So the clan doesn't want Apocalypse to have anything to do with Van Helsing and doesn't want him to follow him. But Apocalypse elects to follow Van Helsing, but he gives Van Helsing a warning, let him know if this doesn't lead to anything, I'm gonna have to deal with you. So Apocalypse was trying to act like he didn't really know what vampires were, but then Ozymandias shows us that back in Egypt that they were dealing with vampires back then too. Some of the pharaohs would turn into vampires, and then obviously Apocalypse had to deal with them. So Apocalypse and them arrive to the morgue to check out the bodies, and the bodies are gone. And Apocalypse is wondering like, what the hell's going on here? And then Van Helsing obviously knows what's going on. He says, look up, and his Akiba clan members are now vampires. So, Apocalypse is dealing with them like they're normal people, uses his powers, snatches them up, snaps their neck. But we all know that's not how you kill a vampire. And eventually, they are not just vampires, but they're vampires that also have Apocalypse powers because they have Apocalypse blood still in them. So they can still do all that crazy stuff and actually injure Apocalypse. Well, come to find out, our detective is not just some lonely detective, that he has powers too, and he's actually able to spit fire, and he injures one of the vampires. But again, we all know that's not a way to kill a vampire. So finally, Van Helsing busts out a stake and it's like, you gotta stake him. You gotta stake him through the heart. And Apocalypse like, I don't even need that stake. And he just stabs all three of them with his powers because he's a beast. So the comic book wraps up at Hamilton's mom's house. She goes to the door and it's Hamilton at the door. She gives him a big hug. She's like, I knew you'll come back. And he's like, yes, mother, I'm back. And let me introduce you to our new lord, Vlad Dracula. We have a rumble in the jungle, except for that jungle happens to be in London. My name is Dorian. This is SCM Comics. We are covering the complete 4-part Apocalypse vs. Dracula series. And the comic book starts off with Van Helsing showing our detective how to apply garlic on all the windows and doorways. And it looks like they're trying to board it up. They're in some kind of safe house or whatever. And then when you turn the page, you see they're joined by Ozymandias and Hamilton's little brother, who is wheelchair bound. We'll find out more on him later. And then you have Apocalypse himself, just sitting outside the safe house, sitting there contemplating to himself. That just shows how much of a gangster he is, because he's not even trying to be safe inside the house. He's just waiting for whoever's coming, and they're coming. So then we do a flashback to Hamilton House a few hours earlier, where we see that the house has been ransacked, and we have Kabar, who is sitting on the table dead, not turned to a vampire, but he has his throat ripped out. So Apocalypse doesn't even bat an eyelash. He's like, oh, I guess he wasn't the fittest. I guess we have to dispose of him. And then Van Helsing's like, there's no need. He didn't get turned. He just got his throat ripped out. When vampires kill you but don't turn you, that's a sign of how they deal with their rivals. So then they run across Frederick, who is Hamilton's brother, who is wheelchair bound, which we talked about before. And Apocalypse like, oh, well, he's a simpleton. They want to take a simpleton into war, and that's what my clan's probably waging right now. And Van Helsing is like, yeah, they're probably losing that war too. So with Kabar being killed but not turned, and with Frederick being left, leads to one thing, and he comes crashing through the walls. Hamilton is now leading the vampires, and he has turned the rest of Apocalypse clans into vampires. So Hamilton wastes no time, and he gets right in Apocalypse's face, and they pretty much get to fighting. And for a second, he is holding his own. And then Apocalypse shows, you might be good, but you ain't as good as me. And he turned his hand into a gun and pretty much shot him, and then he keeps shooting him. And then he turns his hands into a pair of blades, and he's about to cut off Hamilton's head when the rest of the clan all of a sudden joins in, and everybody starts attacking Apocalypse. So all those vampires are even too much for Apocalypse, and eventually they overwhelm him and they're holding him down, and the Hamilton's about to bite his neck when Van Helsing comes out of nowhere and puts a cross on his forehead, and then our detective starts doing his patented flamethrowing and joins in to try to help Apocalypse. So Apocalypse, Van Helsing, our detective Ozymandias, and Frederick are all back in the corner. Our detective is trying to use his flames to keep the vampires back. They're still moving in for the kill when all of a sudden there's this flash of light, and our, I guess you could say, heroes are gone. So this is how Apocalypse and his crew got to the safe house, because Frederick has teleporting abilities. And then we also find out more about Frederick and Ozymandias, how Ozymandias used to train Frederick himself, and how Frederick was considered to be the fittest and was going to be picked, but Hamilton wasn't going to have that, and he beat his brother's head in while he was sleeping, and that's what turned him into a simpleton, in Apocalypse words. So our last book started with our detective in the opium house, and now he's having some withdrawals, and Van Helsing goes to him and says that he will help him with those withdrawals, once this is all over with. So eventually the vampire clan finds a safe house, and Apocalypse is outside fighting a bunch of them, and he's giving them the business, but there's a lot of them, and eventually they start to get into the house, and our detective and Van Helsing are doing what they can, but really it's Ozymandias who really helps out, because he's able to make carvings on the wall and then bring them to life, and the carvings start to fight the vampires. But really what all they're trying to do is hold out until daytime, and then once daytime comes, the vampires have to flee. They waste no time. Just like the vampires find out where the safe house was, they find where the vampires are keeping their caskets during the day, and they start stabbing the caskets, breaking them down. The detective starts burning the caskets and the whole house down, and pretty much the clan has been eliminated. But there's two caveats. So during the fight, Apocalypse got bitten by one of the vampires, and Van Helsing's like, oh no, you're about to turn into a vampire. And Apocalypse is like, calm down, I just need to go to my rejuvenation chamber and then I'll be fine. But then they flash to where it's held at, and it shows that I guess Hamilton went and he destroyed the rejuvenation chamber, so that's out the picture. And Hamilton's casket was amongst the caskets that they destroyed. His is with his mother, and they're on the way to go see Dracula. Yes, SCM Nation, we have made it to the conclusion of X-Men Apocalypse versus Dracula. If you are new to the channel, my name is Dorian. This is SCM Comics, and we are covering the complete Apocalypse vs. Dracula series. If you need to catch up, you can just click the link in the playlist in the description. If you're on YouTube, if you're on TikTok, we broke each issue down into 2 parts. But before we get into issue number 4, I'll give you a very quick recap. 500 years ago, Apocalypse met Dracula on the battlefield when he was still human, and he clapped them cheeks. But now that Dracula is a vampire, he sets off to get his revenge by turning each member of Clan Acuba into vampires. Now, even though Dracula did all of this, Apocalypse was still able to handle his business and dispose of most of Clan Acuba, but his number one dude, Hamilton, was able to get away. He fled to Transylvania to be with Dracula, and now all Apocalypse wants to do is go to Transylvania, find Hamilton and find Dracula, and proceed to
stomp a butthole in your ass and walk it dry.
But there is one caveat. Unfortunately, when he was killing Clan Acuba, he got bit. So now let's see if celestial technology is stronger than vampirism. So our story starts off in Transylvania with Hamilton kneeling to Dracula, and if you look at Hamilton's face, you see a fresh cross scar that Van Helsing gave him in our last issue. And Dracula's doing his normal Dracula thing, and that's feeding on young damsels. And he's also giving Hamilton a hard time because he hasn't been able to dispose of Apocalypse, and this just pisses off Hamilton's mother because she's not turned and she's still loyal to Apocalypse. Like, she starts giving Dracula the business, talking about how Apocalypse is way better of a conqueror than Dracula can ever be, and how Apocalypse has done this and Apocalypse has done that. And then she proceeds to remind Apocalypse that way back in the day, Apocalypse on the battlefield
Lay the smack down on your candy ass.
And before Dracula can say anything, Hamilton jumps up and rips his own mother's throat right out, because he knows that Dracula was probably going to handle her, and after that, he was going to handle him. And like I said before, these are comic book super villains, but if they weren't comic book super villains, they would be cold-blooded gangsters. And one of the one things that gangsters do not accept is any backtalk. So now we transition to the village that sits at the foot of Dracula's castle, and we see that Hamilton's brother Frederick teleports everybody there, and they are greeted instantly by the town folks. But even though they're not vampires, they're also not friendly, and they hit our detective with a rock. So not only can he breathe out fire, but he also can breathe in fire, and he sucks all that fire off of the town folks' torches, and then he throws it right back at them. Van Helsing just starts clapping at them. They start clapping back, and Apocalypse just goes into beast mode, catches the bullets with his mouth, and then sends the bullets back faster than the weapons released them in the first place. But in doing that, the vampire bite is starting to take its toll on Apocalypse, and he falls to one knee. Van Helsing goes and he says, "You're being weakened by the vampire bite." All Apocalypse heard was weak. He gets pissed off. He grabs Van Helsing. He's about to ready to put him on a t-shirt when there's a flash of lightning in between them, and then Dracula appears. And Dracula just appears, and he just starts talking all kinds of mess, talking about, if anybody's reserved the right to kill Van Helsing, it's me. It will not be you. And an Apocalypse is like, "You, Van Helsing, I don't care. Somebody gonna catch these hands." So then right when Apocalypse was about to start putting it to Dracula, all of a sudden these rats appear out of nowhere. And then when you turn the next page, bats come out of nowhere, and then also wolves come out the woodwork, and they all start attacking Apocalypse and everybody. So Apocalypse chin checks this one wolf, and he looks around and he's starting to get pissed. So then he breathes in all this air, and then he starts blowing it out, and he creates like this whirlwind, and he blows all the animals away. So Apocalypse goes to handle Dracula again. He goes to swipe at him, and he's an illusion. And then Dracula goes, "If you want some, come get some, but you gotta do it at Castle Dracula." So Apocalypse goes to Castle Dracula, and obviously Dracula has all of his minions there to meet him. And then Apocalypse shows up. Since Clan Akiba has been taken care of, he calls up the original Riders of the Dark, the people that were with him when Apocalypse first clapped them cheeks, and they all get to fighting. So eventually Apocalypse is able to get to the door, and he breaks it open, and he goes to Dracula, "Enough hiding, you blood-sucking coward." And then Dracula is like, "You know what, I agree. Let's finish this." So while that's going on, the rest of Apocalypse's crew teleports into Dracula's castle, and the detective just instantly gets to burning down the castle. But then Hamilton appears, and the detective tries to start fighting him, but Hamilton is just way too much for the detective. And now we get to one of the best scenes in this whole story. So Hamilton is about to either bite the detective and turn him into a vampire, or he's about to rip his throat out. I don't know which one. When all of a sudden all you see is Frederick's hand goes around Hamilton's head, and Hamilton goes, "Frederick," and all of a sudden all you see is blink, and Frederick blinked his head from his shoulders. I don't know where he sent it, but it's not with his body anymore. And then Frederick's just sitting there with a little smile. To me, I'm thinking in his head, who's the fittest now? So now we transition back to Apocalypse and Dracula, and it looks like Apocalypse is about to cancel Dracula, and right before his attack is about to land, he stops in midair and can't move because Dracula now has control of him because of the vampire bite. So now Dracula does the one thing that all villains aren't supposed to do. He starts monologuing, and he's telling them how Apocalypse's blood is so different from any other blood he's ever had, and it's like invigorating. So I guess sometime in the third book, it wasn't just a vampire bite that he got, but it seems like Dracula bit Apocalypse himself. I guess he showed up to the fight, bit Apocalypse, and rolled out for obvious reasons. So then he's about to bite Apocalypse for a second time, when all of a sudden Van Helsing shows up and throws holy water onto Dracula, which burns him, and Apocalypse uses this one opportunity and he stabs the hell out of Dracula. And then Dracula is sounding just like he did in the first comic book, and he's telling Apocalypse this is not over, and Apocalypse goes, "Yes it is," and this cuts off his head. So then Van Helsing goes, "All right, quick, we need to take the head and we need to burn," and then Apocalypse just picks him up by the neck, and he goes, "Who are you to interfere in Apocalypse's affairs, and it looks like Apocalypse is about to cancel him. And he just puts him down, and then he just walks away. So then we transition back to London, where Van Helsing and the detective are meeting up, and Van Helsing is letting the detective know that now he's on his way to Canada to see about the rumors of some kind of furry white man that's eating people. Obviously, we're talking about a Wendigo. And then the detective's like, oh, the New World. My family will never step foot in the New World, which his last name is Starmore, and Chamber the Mutant is a direct descendant of the detective. So yes, his family will be in America. So now we transition to, I guess for all intents and purposes, a whorehouse, where Ozymandias has arranged that Frederick meet with a lady of the night, and she's like, oh, is everything okay? He goes, look, everything's fine, and he's quite capable. Pretty much what's happening is he's making sure that Clan Akuba continues, since Frederick is now the only survivor of that clan, and he wants to try to keep it from Apocalypse, and the clan just serves under Ozymandias, and he thinks he's holding it from Apocalypse, but obviously the comic book ends with Apocalypse opening up his eyes, because I think he has an idea. So now that we finished this series, let me know in the comments, did you like it? Did you hate it? Please, I really want to know. And no, I did not forget about the Fatal Attraction series. We got 2 more books that we need to cover, and then that series will be complete, and we're definitely going to get back to that. And obviously we're going to keep going on, because Superman Batman is a long series, so that's going to be going on indefinitely, well, until we finish it. And we also have a new series that we're going to be covering. It's pretty much an X-Men book, but it has Avengers in the title. I want you guys to think about that one. In saying that, if you are new here to SEM Comics, please hit the subscribe button and become part of this SEM Nation. Once you become part of this nation, please hit that bell notification so you know when a new video comes out. And if you like this video, please give me a thumbs up. My name is Dorian. This is SEM Comics. Thank you guys for watching my videos. I really do appreciate it. And you guys have a good day.